Hey everyone, it's that time of the week again. It's TK Friday, and today it's a biker image. It's a full edit with PDF notes, downloadable image to follow along with me. Stay tuned. Hello everyone, welcome to the Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. Thank you for joining me again on yet another TK Friday. Hey, I'm doing something a little bit differently now, and what I'm referring to is my YouTube videos. I'm starting to upload them at 4K. I was uploading them at 1080p. I wanted to try 4K. And by the way, in case you don't know, there's a little gear icon on the YouTube videos. You see this gear icon right here. If you click it and go to quality, it gives you different options of resolutions you can use. And by default, it's set for auto, I believe. And you may not be getting 4K. So if you're not getting 4K, click that gear icon and change it to 2160 4K. And you have these other resolutions you can use as well. So put it on 4K if you'd like. If you're viewing your video at full screen, then 4K should make a big difference. But if you're viewing it in a window, a smaller window, then you could probably bump down that resolution to one of these other resolutions here, or leave it on auto. It's on auto by default, like I said, but let me know also in the comments section below if you like this 4K idea. Does it help you? Can you see things better with 4K? Leave me know in the comment section. I really would like to hear from you so I can decide if I'm going to keep putting them up at 4K. It takes me a little bit longer to upload them, to render them out. So I'd like to know that information. It would be very helpful to me. Thank you. If you don't yet own the TK8 plugin for Photoshop, it's only $29. And there's also a video guide. It's $29, but there's a deal where if you get the video guide with the TK8 plugin for Photoshop, you get it all for $49. Plus, when you check out, use my promo code DK15 and you'll save 15% off your entire purchase, everything at the TK web store. This helps support my channel. I make a small commission. There's an affiliate link in the description below this video. Click on that and it'll take you right to the TK web store. Thanks for putting up with the intro. Anyway, here is the PDF notes that you're going to get. They're detailed on everything that I do in this tutorial. And how many steps do we have here today? Just to give you an idea. Well, we have 11 steps. Hopefully it won't be a super long tutorial, but I think you'll learn a lot, and I like doing full edit tutorials. When I used to go out and teach private lessons, people would say, well, just show me everything I need to know to edit my images. And I would say, well, there's so many things you can do in Photoshop, and the best way to learn is pick out an image, we'll work on it, and every time you work on a new image, you're going to learn a new skill set. And that's what TK Fridays are all about. Every TK Friday, there's a new image. We just tackle it. We'll use things we already know. We'll learn new things. And with each image, we get more and more skilled at working with the TK8 plugin for Photoshop. And that's not so bad, is it? Okay, on to this week's image. In the description below the video, there is a link for the PDF notes and a link to grab this image from my Dropbox. This image comes from unsplash.com. I'll also provide a link for the Unsplash image. I made some edits on the image before I put it in my Dropbox, like there was a bunch of power lines and things hanging on the building that I took out. Some things that I didn't like, cleaned up the foreground a little bit. I just thought I'd do some of that work for you. But if you want to do that yourself, download the Unsplash image, which will be linked below. I saved one area of cleanup, and that's right here. See this light gray in this window, and we have brown over here? This light draws the eye, so I'm going to get rid of it. I want to clone this area over onto here. So what I'm going to do is click right here on the TK8 Combo or CX panel, and it'll make you a blank pixel layer because I don't like to paint on the actual background layer. And with an object selection tool, let's grab one here. I'm just going to draw a selection right around here. We don't have to be that accurate because this tool is really good. As you can see, it made that selection. I'm going to hide that selection by clicking on the CX or Combo panel right here. The selection's still there, as you can see by the indicator. And now with a clone stamp tool, I'm going to type S, that's the shortcut. I'm going to make sure my opacity is at 100%. I'm typing my 0 key. I'm going to Option or Alt click right here and start to paint. And that selection's protecting me. You see that? I just don't see it. Now I have a hard edge right here, which I don't like. I'm going to fix that. And it pays to resample at different areas. So as I'm resampling, I'm just looking at it and seeing if it looks good. And I think I pretty much got it, but I got to fix that hard edge on the right. Notice we're painting on a blank pixel layer. So I can't sample from this side because there's nothing there. And I have this set at sample all layers. So we need to get rid of our selection. So click right here. And then with a small brush at around 30% opacity, just start to smooth out this edge here. You see that? I'm lifting my brush several times and it applies more of that 30%. And basically, I just want this to look realistic. Now down here, I'll Option or Alt click and sample from a different point. And see, I'm just smoothing that. And I'll even go right here and come down a little bit at 30% and let that blend in. And this area is a little bit too hard edged, so I'm going to go ahead and fix that up. Clone stamping is an art, but the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. If you click on this button on the CX or combo panel, you'll go to full screen. Now let's take a look. Here is the before and here's the after. And I think that looks much better. My eye's not drawn back there. Can you guess what my next step is? Well, I'm going to come up here and click on the Luminosity Mask button. And I'm going to go to Mids 3, yes, balance and contrast. I'll put it to a color grading tool. I'll start with shadows, so click on the shadow block. This bike is really dark, so I just want to open up the shadows a little bit, somewhere right around in there. Then I'm going to go to midtones. Let's open up the midtones a little wee bit. Then I want to cool down the midtones because there's some blue back here, and I think that'll look really nice. So I'm going to make that a little more on the blue side, somewhere right around there. And now for the light tones, I'm going to click on the white block, and I'm going to drag this to the right and lighten up the light tones. But I have a lot of skin tone in here in the light areas, so I'm going to warm up those areas. It won't affect the areas in the background so much. But let's take a look. Here's the before and here's the after, but I think that looks better. The next thing I want to do is lighten up the biker because I want to darken the background, but I want the biker lighter. So we're going to select the subject. So click the CX or combo panel here to select the subject. And the subject selected. Now you can grab your object selection tool because it missed some areas. Like right down here. If you hold your shift key down and grab this area here, you'll fix that. I went ahead and zoomed in so we could really see what we're doing. Now, again, hold your shift key down to add. Hold your Alt or Option key down to subtract. In some areas I'm subtracting, some areas I'm adding, and sometimes you get a little stubborn spot. Use your lasso tool, and you can use that same principle of shift to add, Alt or Option to subtract. But, you know, take your time and get it right. But this doesn't have to be 100% perfect because it'll work just fine. But I'm just working till I get everything. Say I got a nasty spot, I use my lasso tool right there to get that. Now you can go ahead into select and mask this button right here. But I find with something like this, it's not that big of a deal. It doesn't have to be real critical. I'm going to X out the color grading tool. And we could come here and click on this edit selection tool. And we could take a look at our mask. And everything looks really good here. You can add some feathering to it if you want to. I don't really think we need to, so I think everything's good, but I want to save this out as a channel because we're going to use it. But first I'll grab a white brush and clean up any areas inside the biker that it has missed because it's missed a couple little spots, and we have all these tools here. Let's click on save, and let's call this bike or motorcycle. I'm just going to call it bike and click OK. And the other thing I want to do is, and you can see it's saved down here. Now I want to invert it. There's an invert button here, so click invert. Now we've selected everything but the biker, so let's go ahead and click save, and we'll call this everything but biker. And don't forget, after you're done typing this in, click OK to save it as a channel. Now this is an important step, and don't miss it. You have to invert it again because we're going to start using the bike first. And then click this button to come back and load it as a selection again. And now you'll notice there's a selection. We don't see the marching ants because the panel hides the marching ants for us. And this button here will show the ants back, and you can hide them again. I didn't need to show you the ants again. I just wanted you to see they are there. Let's go ahead and fit this to screen. Now let's go ahead and draw some attention to our biker by lightening him up. So let's come up here to My Channels. Let's click on either the active selection or bike. It's the same thing. So I'll click on active selection, and we're going to go ahead and use a mask calculator, one of my favorite tools here. Click on X to intersect because I want to intersect a Mids 3 mask here. And that's what I use for doing like these balancing adjustments. And we're going to go ahead and X out of here. And now we're going to go to Luminosity Masks, grab a mids 3 and click equals. And just like that, we have a mids 3 on here. I'll put it to a color grading tool. I'll start with lightening the shadows. So click the black block and drag this to the right. And you can see the pants have gotten a lot lighter. Tires get a little bit lighter. I'm going to go to midtones. We're going to lighten up the midtones a little bit. And then just to tame some of the highlights, I'm going to go to the highlights block and pull the highlights back. And that will just tame those highlights. You see that tames them back a little bit. Now let's add a little color grading to the highlights to bring some warmth back into the arms. So I'm going to drag this white block up really high up into these yellow tones here to bring some color back into those arms. Here's the before and here is the after. So we're definitely lighting our biker up and I like it. Now to offset the biker and to bring the biker out even more, let's darken everything but the bike. So let's X out of the color grading tool. Let's click on Luminosity Masks. This is a little different, so follow closely. Let's do a mids 3 again because I'm going to balance out the background. I'm going to darken it actually. We're going to click on Mask Calculator. I want to minus the biker, so let's click on the minus here. X out of here, go to My Channels, and now we want the bike. And now we're going to click equals. And now you'll notice the biker is masked out. We're going to output this to a color grading tool and then simply start with shadows. We're going to darken up the shadows. And let your eye decide where they should go. I'm going to go to midtones. I want to darken up the midtones. Like somewhere right around there. And now we're going to take the highlights and we're going to pull those back as well. And that's going to help this area up in front. Okay, so let's take a look. Here is the before. And now here is the after. But you see how the biker really stands out now? Let's do a before and after of the entire image. Here's the overall before, and now here is the after. So we are moving in the right direction. Let's keep going. Let me look at the notes. The next step is to darken the area in front of the biker, and then right after that, we'll darken the very bottom of the image to close it off. To darken this area, we'll be using a gradient tool, but we're also going to be using a curves adjustment layer. Let's X out of this color grading tool. The adjustment doesn't go away. It's just hiding our panel. Take notice of the foreground and background colors. I need white to be foreground, so type your X key, that'll flip it around. To ever get your default, just type D for white and black. Now we want to grab a curves adjustment layer. We want to change it to the multiply blend mode by clicking this button right here. We don't need the properties panel. Let's just close that. Now you notice the entire image is dark, so we're going to put a black mask on here to hide that adjustment. So click right here in the CX or combo panel that hides it. And now make sure you get your gradient tool right here. And you notice it's white to black. Hold your shift key and drag straight up. That'll keep that straight. It won't get on an angle for you. And that's important. So I'm going to drag it up and then let it go and see the result. And that does really good. I'm going to try it one more time. I'm going to hold the shift key down again and drag it up just a little bit higher. And it looks the same. Maybe a little bit more. Right there, I think that looks good. To close out the bottom, we can cheat. We can still this whole layer. So if we click this button right here, we'll copy that layer. Now, we've doubled the effect and I don't want that, but let's put a black mask on that again and hide the effect. Now hold your shift key down again and just drag up a little bit. Okay? I think right there, and that closes off the bottom. It's a little too strong, so take your opacity and just pull that back a little bit. But you see how that just closes off, and it makes the image have a little bit more depth to it as well. In fact, I may just do that one more time. I'm going to hold the shift key down and drag it up a little bit further. Now that's more like it. I like it. Let's take a look at the before. Here's the before, and now the after. And let's look at the overall before. Here's the overall before of everything, and here's the after. We're moving in the right direction. Let's see what's next. You see this area right here. All these light areas, you know, they'll draw the viewer's eye. And I don't want my viewer going up here. I want him to go on the guy on the bike. Now this looks like a job for the zone mask. So I'm going to click on the zone mask button here and sample this area right up in here, that light area. Click OK. And it does a really nice selection, but I think I'll tighten it up a little bit. I always call this tighten and lighten. Okay, so I got some nice black around here. I'll tighten it up just a little bit more. That's good. Now I'm going to lighten it up. I want to maintain texture here, so I don't want to go too light. And now we can get this area right in here. So we got to get a lasso tool, because I'm going to use the Mask the Mask feature. Get a lasso tool, just lasso around here. You can be really sloppy here. Just don't want to go into the white area. Now click this button right here, and it gives us a feather radius, but we don't need a feather radius on here because we have a nice clean selection. Click cancel. That doesn't apply a feather, but see that? It's really good. And then just click on the output to color grading tool right here, and now we'll make an adjustment. Now this is all light, not much shadow up in here, so let's click on midtones. Let's pull back our midtones. See how I can really tone that back. I'm going to bring them back pretty far at first. Then I'm going to grab my highlights and really pull that back as well. See that? That can really pull it back. If I go too far, I'll lose texture here, so I got to be really careful there. So maybe right around there. Now let's go back to midtones and let me give it a little bit of a tweak. Yeah, I think that looks good there. Here is the before and the after. Yeah, that looks much better. And now this looks too light to me. So I'm going to get an object selection tool and just go right around this area here. And this object selection tool does a fantastic job. This is a hard edge selection, but I can feather it. There's a tool here on the CX or combo panel right here, this little feather. All these tools across here are for selections. This will expand a selection, contract a selection, and invert a selection. But let's click on, and don't confuse this invert with this invert. This inverts pixels, this inverts selections. So let's click on the feather, and I'm going to feather that to like 5 pixels. Right now it's at 15. I'm going to go ahead and type 5 and click OK. And now it's feathered. If we want to see what that feathered selection looks like, right now we have a color grading tool. Let's X out of that. We can go and click this button right here to go into edit selection. And there you can see the feathering right there. We can add more by clicking on this teardrop right here and add more feathering. But it's good. I'm going to click right here and we'll load it back up. And you can see we have the marching ants. Now all we need to do is grab a curves adjustment layer. And what do you think I'm going to do? Well, I don't need properties, so that should give you a clue. I'm going to change this to the multiply blend mode, and it darkens it up. It's too dark, but I'm going to go ahead and pull its opacity back. I'll take it the whole way off and then just start to build it up and stop where I think it looks good. And right around here, 35%. I think I had 33% in my notes. Let's take a look at the before and after. Before, see how your eye's drawn up there. Not too bad, but it's just a little too bright. And I like to say, pay attention to details. Now here is the after. Now that looks much better to me. Now I'm noticing this area is too light. You know, I fix one thing, I see something else, but that's the way it works in editing. Okay, so this is too light. Have you noticed every time I darken things, I'm using a curves adjustment layer with a multiply blend mode? It's a very effective way of darkening things. So let's go ahead and grab a curves adjustment layer. Click on multiply. Everything gets dark. Hide it with a mask. Click right here. Click for a black mask. It's hidden. I'll hide this property panel, and I'm going to use a zone mask to make a selection. So let's click on our zone mask tool and click right around this area right here, which really represents it. Click OK. And that's a really broad selection. I'm going to tighten it up like I always like to do. Tighten it up maybe somewhere in that area. It's even getting right here. Let's lighten it up a little bit so we get a stronger adjustment. We're going to output this to a black mask with a white brush painting through a selection, and this way I can strategically darken it wherever I want. I'm going to use a 50% opacity brush, a nice soft edge brush, and I can just start darkening areas down. I can be very liberal here. It's protecting me with the mask. Up in here and here, over in here, and again I can even get some areas here. Every time I lift the brush and paint again, it's going to apply more paint. So you know, whatever you think. So again, every time you lift, you're going to add a little bit more. And I think I'm pretty good. Even under here. Let's take a look. Here's the before, and here's after. If we want to look at our mask, click this double arrow icon, and you can see where we've painted, just like that. Click it again, and now we see it. Now here's the before, and here's the after. And now you see this blue awning back here. This is bugging me. So I got to fix it. Let's get a object selection tool, and we can zoom in so we can really see it and see what we're doing here. Sometimes I forget to do that, but it pays to zoom in, and let's just object select this area and see what artificial intelligence can do for us. And that looks pretty good. And just for safety's sake, I think I'll feather this. So I'm going to click on this feather icon in the CX or combo panel, and 10 pixels sounds good. I'm going to click OK. Probably don't need it, but why not? And then I'm going to change the color. So I'm going to output it to a hue saturation adjustment layer. And I played around with saturation and lightness and hue, but I found out at the end of the day that colorize work the best. I like colorize, and this is a good tip for you. Try colorize sometimes. Sometimes you'll get really good results with it. So I'm going to click colorize, and I'm going to start out with hue because now it's red. Now red might not look bad, but I'm going to go back to a blue color, and that was right around here, I think is good. I'm going to pull back the saturation to right there, and I'm going to darken it up a little bit to say like a -8. Now here is the before and here's the after. But doesn't that look much better? I may end up giving a little bit more saturation. Right there, I think that's good. Here's the before and here is the after. I'm going to go ahead and hide this properties panel. I'm going to go ahead and click this icon to fit it to the screen again. Here's my overall before and here is my after. I think it needs a vignette. What doesn't need a vignette? And for that, we'll go to TK Actions, and let's just get a regular vignette. I'll accept the Gaussian blur for what it is, because that always works out perfectly, in my opinion. And let's see, here's the before, and here's the after. I like to protect the shadows with blend diff, so double-click right here. I want to protect the shadows. This is a shadow slider, so I'm going to drag it to the right, just so I'm protecting the deep shadows. And now I'll hold your Alt or Option key down and split this. This will give us some nice smooth transitions. Just look at your image when you're doing that. And I think this is good right about here. Click OK. And now let's take a look. Here's the before. And here's the after. Now I'm going to make my image a little smaller. Click this negative button on the CX panel. I like to see a little more space around my image. It really helps me to gauge if I got the vignette right. Here is the before. And here is the after, and I think it looks really good. And now finally, the overall before and the overall after. I like it. I think the edit came out really nice. Well, there it is, everyone. TK8 and the Biker, a full edit. Don't forget, download the image, download the PDF notes, and comment, ask me questions, like, share, subscribe. If you're not yet a subscriber, please subscribe. Click the bell notification, and then every time I send out a new tutorial, you'll be notified. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me today in the Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. I'll see you all right here next time, but until then, happy editing!